Okay, let's unpack this. Welcome to today's deep dive.
Yeah, I am really excited to get into this one.
Right, because whether you are a tabletop gamer looking to, level up your role play, or a writer trying to craft the perfect antagonist.
We're honestly someone prepping to just absolutely dominate their next board meeting.
Exactly.
Uh,
Or if you're just a deeply curious learner who wants to understand the hidden mechanics of human interaction, you are in exactly the right place.
you really are.
Today, we are opening up a genuinely fascinating source document. It's titled Liz Voice Acting Tips.pdf, and it's dated March 3, 2026.
Such a specific and interesting artifact.
It is.
Yeah.
And on its surface, this is a masterclass playbook on how to roleplay, voice act, and write a cinematic villain queen character named Liz. And she happens to be a warlock in Dungeons & Dragons.
Right.
Now, if you aren't a gamer, stick with me here. A warlock in this context is just a character who made a literal deal for power. But our mission today isn't just to learn about a fictional fantasy character.
No, not at all. That's just the packaging.
Right. We are looking at this document because it is an absolute gold mine of psychology. We're going to unpack the power dynamics, the linguistic tricks, and the sheer weaponized charisma of a master manipulator.
Weaponized charisma is the perfect way to phrase it.
Thank you. We're exploring how performance as identity actually works, how you can control a room without ever raising your voice,
Yep.
and how very specific psychological tactics can assert absolute dominance in literally any social dynamic you find yourself in.
And what's really fascinating here is that this document operates on multiple levels simultaneously.
No, completely.
Like we said, yes, the packaging is a guide for a tabletop game, but if you look past the fantasy elements, what you are actually reading is a brilliant, applied study in perception management. It's emotional intelligence and social
The
chess.
social chess, I love that.
Because Liz isn't just a fictional villain, right? She is an archetype of supreme, almost overwhelming confidence.
Yeah, reading it, it feels almost intimidating.
It should. The notes in this document offer a true masterclass in how human beings process status, authority, and threat. When we analyze her methods, and we're going to look really closely at her pacing, her word choices, her physical presence.
Oh, yeah, we're breaking it all down.
We're really analyzing the cognitive biases that govern all human interaction. We're looking at the foundational reasons why certain people can walk into a boardroom or a classroom or a party and instantly own the space.
Well, others are just immediately relegated to the background.
Exactly.
I have to admit, reading through this, I felt like I was being handed a superpower. But I also felt a little intimidated by it.
How so?
Because before Liz even opens her mouth, her power is rooted in her mindset. The foundational belief of this character, according to the document, is incredibly simple but wildly powerful. It's literally just Liz is always winning.
Liz is always winning.
Yeah, she treats every single interaction like a stage where she has already secured the victory. She views everyone else in the room as either prey, an audience, or a pawn.
It's a very binary way of looking at the world.
Extremely. Her worldview is strictly eat or be eaten. And she views conflict, which, most of us absolutely dread and try to avoid at all costs.
Right. Conflict is usually highly stressful.
But she views it as pure entertainment. But here's the part I really stumbled on. How does someone walk around with the mindset of, I'm always winning, without just coming off as completely delusional or, toxically positive?
Well, that is the crucial distinction here, and it really comes down to how she defines winning.
Okay, break that down for me.
For most people, winning means getting a specific external outcome. So, closing the sale, getting the promotion, winning the argument.
Right, and if they don't get that outcome, they lose.
Exactly. But for Liz, winning isn't tied to an external outcome at all. Winning is about maintaining control of the narrative.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. The document outlines her core values as social dominance, admiration, autonomy, and efficiency. And that last one, efficiency, is explicitly defined as least effort, biggest outcome.
Least effort, biggest outcome. That is so counterintuitive to how we're usually taught to operate.
It really is. This concept of casual victory is where we actually start dealing with advanced perception management. In human psychology, effort is often subconsciously linked to a lack of status.
Wait, really? Because, we're always taught that trying hard is a virtue. Give it 110%, put your back into it.
Right, and it is a virtue for productivity. If you're building a house or finishing a spreadsheet, yes, effort is great. But in the raw, primal calculus of social dominance, visible effort is a vulnerability.
I have never thought about it like that.
Think about it. If you have to try hard, if you have to yell to be heard, if you are visibly sweating to get your point across in a negotiation, what are you actually signaling?
That I don't already have the room's attention.
Exactly. You are signaling to the room that you do not naturally hold the power. You are working to acquire power you don't currently possess.
That makes so much sense. So Liz's power isn't brute force at all.
Not even a little bit. It's framing power as a performance and a spectacle. By assuming everyone secretly wants her attention, and by treating genuine danger or conflict as a joke, she completely controls the psychological narrative of the room.
She dictates reality.
She dictates reality because she refuses to accept any reality where she isn't the dominant force. When you strip the anxiety and effort out of your own communication, you instantly make everyone else's anxiety seem misplaced, almost foolish.
Okay, I see what you mean now. It's that bored superiority energy. There is a quote from the text that perfectly captures this lack of effort. Someone tries to threaten her, and her response is simply, "Is this the best you've got? I canceled plans for this."
It's brilliantly dismissive.
It's so dismissive. She isn't matching their aggressive energy at all. She's treating them like a disappointment. I'm trying to imagine extrapolating this to the real world. Say you're heading into a high-stakes scenario.
Like a tough negotiation.
Right, like a really difficult conversation with a hostile client. If you walk in genuinely believing the game is already won, your physiology changes, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Your shoulders drop, your breathing slows down, you stop seeking their validation.
You stop playing defense.
Precisely. You stop playing defense. And the document illustrates this beautifully with a practical technique it calls the predator scan.
Yes, the predator scan.
Before she even speaks, the document says Liz looks at each person in the room slowly. She actively lets the silence stretch. Then she picks one person and declares, "You're the nervous one."
Which is terrifying.
It is. But think about the mechanics of what just happened there. Instantly, she has manufactured tension out of thin air, and she has established herself as the evaluator, the judge.
Everyone else in that room is now reacting to her assessment.
Exactly.
See, I read that part, the advanced Liz technique, where she narrates what other people are feeling, and I initially pushed back on it. The text says she'll look at someone and say, "You're angry, embarrassed, and just a little impressed."
A bold move.
Very bold. My initial thought was, if someone did that to me, I'd immediately get defensive and tell them they're completely wrong. Isn't that a massive risk, telling people what their internal reality is?
It is a risk if you do it with hesitation. But that is exactly why the absolute calm confidence is required. It is a form of conversational hypnosis.
Conversational hypnosis.
Yeah. Yes. When you tell someone how they feel, and you are accurate even in the slightest, maybe they are a little embarrassed or a little impressed, you bypass their critical thinking. You position yourself as an authority over their own internal state.
That is wild.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this is a tactic heavily utilized by high-level interrogators and hostage negotiators. It's called labeling.
Right, labeling. I've heard of that in FBI negotiation.
Oh, exactly. But Liz uses it differently. She doesn't just use it to gather information or build rapport, which is how a negotiator uses it. She uses it to trap her targets in a frame of her own making.
So she tells them how to feel.
Yes. If you tell someone they are nervous, and you say it with total certainty, they suddenly become hyper-aware of their own heartbeat. And ironically, they become nervous.
So she is essentially hacking their nervous system by planting a suggestion.
That's a great way to put it.
Mindset is the engine driving this, obviously. But confidence in your head is completely useless if you can't project it outwardly. And according to the document, the moment she opened her mouth, she uses a very specific delivery method.
The sonic signature.
Yes, the sonic signature. Let's look at her voice, her tone, and her body language, because this physical performance is where the psychology actually becomes weaponized. The very first rule of this signature is pace.
Pace is everything.
The text states Liz speaks 10 to 20% slower than everyone else in the room. Silence is her power. The text gives this great contrast. It says a normal villain says, "You're making a mistake."
Right.
But Liz pauses, takes a breath, and says, "Oh, sweetie, you already made the mistake."
That 10 to 20% reduction in speed is non-negotiable if you want to project this kind of authority. From an evolutionary psychology standpoint, speech pace is a massive indicator of status.
Really? Just the speed alone?
Absolutely. Think about it. A person who speaks quickly, who rushes to fill the silence, is subconsciously communicating that they fear interruption.
Oh, like they're trying to cram it all in before someone cuts them off.
Precisely. They are trying to get their words out before someone with higher status talks over them. They don't believe they own the time.
They don't own the time. That is profound.
When you consciously slow your speech down, it signals to the listener's brain that you are in total control of the environment. You are declaring, without saying a single word, that nobody in this room is going to interrupt you.
That makes so much sense, but it is so hard to do. When my adrenaline spikes in an argument, my natural instinct is to talk faster and get louder.
Which is what everyone does, and it's exactly what you shouldn't do.
Yeah. Which brings us to the next point, tone and volume. The guide describes her tone as a velvet dagger, a seductive villain, an amused predator. The tone dictates to the room, I'm entertained, not threatened.
Entertained, not threatened. That's cute.
And the volume rule really surprised me. The text explicitly says, bad villains shout, good villains lower their voice.
It's brilliant advice.
It says lowering the volume forces people to physically lean in and listen harder. There is an example in the notes where the entire party is panicking about a trap, and she just calmly, quietly asks, are we done panicking? Why is quiet so much more intimidating than loud?
Because shouting is a biological admission of a loss of control.
A loss of control.
Yes. Shouting means your environment has overwhelmed you and your emotions have hijacked your logic. When you raise your voice, you are essentially begging the room to pay attention to you.
You're pleading for dominance.
Exactly. But when Liz lowers her voice, she forces the environment to quiet down to accommodate her. She makes everyone else expend energy to hear what she has to say. It is a subtle but profound display of dominance.
That's incredible.
Think about a crowded restaurant. If someone starts yelling, everyone looks, sure, but they judge the person as unstable.
Yeah, you think, oh, someone's having a meltdown.
Right. But if two people are leaning across a table, whispering intensely, people are far more unsettled because it signals a controlled, deliberate secret.
That is a great analogy. And this quiet control is amplified by her physical cues, particularly the smile.
The smile is crucial.
The text makes a huge point of this. She smiles slightly before speaking, even when delivering direct threats. I was literally practicing this in my bathroom mirror earlier, and I felt a bit like a comic book villain.
It takes practice to not feel ridiculous.
It really does. Because if I furrow my brow and say, run if you want, I enjoy the chase, I just sound like an angry tough guy. But if I relax my shoulders, tilt my head, put on a tiny amused smile, and slow the pace way down.
Let's hear it.
Run if you want, I enjoy the chase. It feels totally different. But doesn't she risk just looking crazy?
She avoids looking crazy because the smile isn't manic, it's amused. What she's actually doing is weaponizing cognitive dissonance.
Okay, unpack cognitive dissonance for us.
Cognitive dissonance is the mental discomfort experienced by someone who holds two or more contradictory beliefs or ideas at the exact same time. The words she is saying communicate a lethal threat.
Right. I enjoy the chase as a threat.
But her facial expression communicates playfulness and safety. The target's brain struggles to reconcile the two. Is she going to hurt me, or is this a joke?
The brain gets stuck.
Exactly. Because the brain can't quickly categorize the threat level, it causes the target to freeze or become disoriented. You've introduced uncertainty into their processing. And in any social dynamic, in that moment of uncertainty, the person displaying the most confidence, which is Liz, wins the interaction.
Wow.
What's fascinating here is how these physical cues pair with strategic pauses, which the document calls the villain gravity trick.
Yes. The villain gravity. The text says that by pausing right before the punchline, like saying, relax, little mouse, and then a long pause, I planned for this. It creates a vacuum. It acts like a black hole for attention, pulling everyone's anticipation toward her next word.
Exactly. The pause builds unbearable tension. Most people are deeply uncomfortable with silence in a conversation.
We hate it. We just want to talk over it.
They will do anything to fill it. By holding the silence, Liz demonstrates that she is entirely comfortable with their discomfort.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. Now that we understand how she thinks and the sonic tools she uses to deliver her message, let's look at the actual linguistic architecture she uses to build her empire, the actual words she chooses.
The mechanics of the dialogue.
Yes. The golden rule of playing this character, according to the document, is that Liz never asks. She declares reality.
Never asks.
The text explicitly says, instead of saying something collaborative like, maybe we should go there, she states, we're going there.
Yeah.
It seems like a minor vocabulary shift, but it feels massive in practice.
It is a massive shift because it is the exact difference between a suggestion and an assertion.
Okay, what's the difference psychologically?
A suggestion invites debate. It inherently acknowledges that the other people in the room have an equal say in the outcome. An assertion closes the door to debate. When you declare reality, you force the other person to actively challenge you, to initiate conflict if they want to change the plan.
And most people don't want to initiate conflict, right?
Exactly. Human beings, by and large, are incredibly conflict averse. If you state something with absolute authority, the average person will naturally default to the path of least resistance, which is simply accepting your declared reality.
Because fighting it is exhausting.
It takes a tremendous amount of social energy to stop a meeting and say, actually, no, I disagree with that premise. Liz banks on the fact that most people won't spend that energy.
And when she does declare that reality, she often uses a very specific cadence. The text calls it the three-part sentence rhythm.
It's very Shakespearean.
It really is. It's described as highly theatrical and powerful. The example given in the notes is, you tried to outplay me, you failed, and now you're on the menu.
Rule of three.
Yes, it's punchy, it builds momentum, and it hits like a hammer. But my absolute favorite linguistic trick she uses, the one I actually want to try and use in my own life, is the labels.
The labels are brilliant.
She assigns identities instantly. She calls people little mouse, darling, sweetie, hero, or rival. She frames the relationship before the other person can even introduce themselves. What is the psychology of just up and renaming someone?
By labeling someone, she is defining their role in her play before they even realize the curtain has gone up.
Oh, that's good.
If she looks at a powerful adversary and calls them little mouse, she is establishing that she is the cat. If she calls a self-righteous person hero, she is mocking their earnestness and painting them as a cliché.
She's boxing them in.
It is a framing technique. If you accept the label, even passively, just by answering to it and not correcting her, you have subconsciously accepted the hierarchy she just constructed. You are now playing on her board by her rules.
That is wild. Just by not fighting the nickname, you surrender.
Yes.
And she pairs these labels with a very specific structural pattern for her dialogue. The compliment followed by the twist.
This is such a sophisticated technique.
The text points out that Liz rarely insults directly. Blunt insults are low status. Instead, she uses this structure. She'll say, you're clever. Clever people usually know when they've lost.
Oh.
Or, oh, I like you, you're brave. Brave people make such dramatic casualties.
It's devastating.
It's the observation, followed by the twist, ending in absolute dominance. I feel like if I tried this in a board meeting, say someone was trying to shoot down my proposal. If I said, John, you were always so passionate about the budget. It's a shame passionate people sometimes miss the larger strategic vision.
John wouldn't know what hit him.
He'd be destroyed. But why does that work better than just saying, John, you're missing the point?
From a neurological standpoint, this structure is devastatingly effective. When someone hears a compliment, when you say, John, you're always so passionate, or Liz says, you're clever, their brain instantly releases a tiny hit of dopamine.
They feel good?
They feel good. It feels good to be recognized. As a result, their psychological defenses drop. They feel validated. By starting with a compliment, she completely disarms their fight-or-flight response.
She lowers the drawbridge.
Exactly. When the twist hits immediately after, their defenses are completely down, making the threat or the insult land much harder and much deeper. And because it started positively, it feels charming, sophisticated, and observant, rather than just petty, defensive, or cruel.
He's verbal judo.
It is verbal judo. She uses their own desire for validation against them.
And of course, she has her own labels for herself.
Yeah.
The titles. Chaos Queen, Apex Predator, Hadbuck's Heiress, the Hypnotic Queen, your favorite enemy.
Dove loves her titles.
She'll say something completely over the top like, relax, darling. The Apex Predator only bites when she's bored. It's so theatrical. But because she delivers it with that slow, quiet confidence we talked about, you kind of just have to accept it.
It goes right back to her core belief. Liz is always winning. If she introduces herself to the room as Apex Predator, she leaves no conceptual room for you to categorize her as anything less. She occupies the highest status position before anyone else even realizes there is a competition for it.
So this linguistic architecture is brilliant in theory, but it applies very differently depending on exactly who she is talking to and what the situational context is.
Context matters.
Let's look at the Predator's actual arsenal. We're going to dive into the specific dialogue categories provided in the text. Let's start with everyday life and pure confidence. How does someone like Liz navigate just walking into a room or explaining a success?
The baseline Liz energy.
Right. The text gives us lines like, I didn't win. I simply allowed reality to catch up with me. Or, I'm not lucky. I'm inevitable.
Those lines are perfect textbook examples of a psychological concept called an internal locus of control, taken to the absolute extreme.
Let's pause on that because I know we've thrown around a lot of terms. For listeners who haven't taken a psychology class in a while, what exactly is an internal locus of control, and how does it differ from how most of us operate?
Of course. A locus of control refers to how much you believe you dictate the events in your life. Most people have, at least partially, an external locus of control.
Meaning things happen to them.
Right. If you are late for work, you blame the external traffic. If you miss a sales quota, you blame the external market conditions. If you win an award, you might humbly say, I was just in the right place at the right time. You attribute outcomes to forces outside yourself.
Okay, that makes sense. That's how normal people talk.
But someone with a purely internal locus of control believes they are the sole architect of their outcomes. If they fail, it's because they made a mistake. If they succeed, it's because they willed it to happen.
So Liz takes that to the absolute limit.
Exactly. Liz refuses to attribute success to chance, luck, or even the actions of others. When she says, I'm inevitable, she is claiming absolute dominion over her reality. She is the prime mover in her universe.
That makes the line, I allowed reality to catch up with me, so much more arrogant, but in a weirdly compelling way.
It's mesmerizing.
Then we have her playful insults. The guide emphasizes that these should be funny, not mean. She teases like a cat batting a toy. For example, your brain took a scenic route to that conclusion. Or my personal favorite, I support you, emotionally, from a safe distance.
Notice how those insults don't invite a defensive, aggressive response.
Yeah, they don't make you want to punch her.
Right. If you call someone stupid, they will fight you. If you tell them their brain took a scenic route, you might actually get a laugh out of them, even as you are insulting their intelligence. These insults are disarming. They establish superiority through wit.
It's not about crushing them.
No, crushing someone's self-esteem is a sign of insecurity. It's about playfully pointing out the gap in competence between the two of you while remaining entirely emotionally detached.
Which bleeds perfectly into how she flirts, because Liz flirting is explicitly described in the document as a cat with lipstick watching a laser pointer.
Such a vivid image.
It's a half smile, half threat. Playful, predator energy. She'll say, you're dangerously close to earning my attention. Or, try not to fall for me too quickly. Doesn't sound very romantic.
That's because flirting in this specific context is not about romance. It is entirely about dominance.
So it's a power play.
100%. She is not seeking connection, vulnerability, or partnership. She is making the other person work for her approval. By saying, you're dangerously close to earning my attention, she establishes that her attention is a rare prize of extremely high value.
And the other person is beneath it, but trying to get it.
Exactly. She flips the script. She makes them the applicant, and she is the deciding committee. It's a very common tactic used by highly charismatic people in the dating world, making the other person feel like they're constantly auditioning.
Auditioning for her affection.
Yes.
And if they fail the audition, or if they decide to fight her, we get to the combat lines. Now, just to ground this in the D&D setting for a second, she uses a magic spell called Eldritch Blast. It's basically a supernatural sniper rifle, or a magical punch. But she doesn't just attack mechanically. She announces their downfall.
Theatrics, even in a fight.
Always. The text has her saying, let me educate you in arcane etiquette. When the queen speaks, you disappear. Or her signature catchphrase before she fires, bow or be blasted. It's pure, unadulterated theatrical domination.
What's important here is the maintenance of the persona under extreme stress.
Oh, because combat is stressful.
Extremely. In a high-stakes combat scenario, or even a highly heated real-world argument, most people regress to basic, panicked communication. They curse, they stutter, their vocabulary shrinks.
They lose their cool.
But by maintaining her theatricality, her complex vocabulary, and her poetic rhythm during violence or intense conflict, she demonstrates to everyone watching that the threat level to her nervous system is zero.
She is completely unbothered.
She is above the fray.
And when she really wants to hold the room, she drops a full monologue.
Yeah.
She uses that 3-beat rhythm we talked about, hitting themes of eat or be eaten or acting like the final boss. One of the best monologues in the text is, I didn't arrive here by accident. I am the storm.
Ew.
Or my absolute favorite, the ultimate comeback for a doubter trying to intimidate her. Oh, sweetie, I eat rivals like you for breakfast. It's iconic.
It is iconic. But if we connect this to the bigger picture of social dynamics, it is one thing to dominate your external enemies and verbally spar with strangers. That is external conflict. The real test of leadership, manipulation, and perception management is internal.
How she deals with her friends.
Yes. How do you manage your own team? How do you keep allies close without surrendering your dominance?
Exactly. Because as the text explicitly says, a queen without subjects is just a woman yelling in an empty room. That brings us to how Liz manages her allies and her party dynamics. When she is with her friends, her pack, she switches from apex predator to what the document calls queen bee energy.
Queen bee.
She still dominates the room, but she does it in a way that keeps them fiercely loyal and makes them feel incredibly lucky that she picked them to hang out with. There is a whole set of rules for this dynamic in the document.
Let's hear them.
Rule 1, she assigns roles. To the hulking fighter, she says, "You're my favorite blunt instrument." To the healing cleric, she says, "You keep us alive. I keep us interesting."
This is a brilliant organizational tactic. Think about this in a corporate environment. A skilled project manager will do exactly this. By assigning specific roles, you are giving people an identity and a clear purpose within your structure. It makes them feel seen, valued, and necessary.
But it keeps her on top.
Crucially, yes, it keeps them slightly beneath the person assigning the roles because she is the one dispensing the titles. She is the architect of the group's dynamic. She decides who is the instrument and who is the healer.
Rule 2 is she teases her allies, but she treats them like younger siblings. She's grooming into usefulness. The absolute key here in the text is that her teasing must make the table laugh, not feel attacked.
The humor softens the blow.
Right. If a party member charges into a room recklessly, she sighs and says, "Ah, yes. The ancient strategy of punch first, think never." I love consistency. It's funny, it points out the strategic flaw, but it doesn't break their spirit.
It's correction through comedy.
And that ties right into Rule 3, reward loyalty. Tiny praise from Liz feels like a massive trophy. She'll literally just say, "Good mouse. You're learning." How does calling someone a mouse and giving them a tiny scrap of praise generate loyalty? Feels like it should build resentment.
It would build resentment if she were constantly cruel. But this relies on a deeply ingrained psychological mechanism called intermittent reinforcement.
Okay, let's break that down. Because that sounds incredibly manipulative, borderline abusive if done wrong. What is intermittent reinforcement?
Oh, it is highly manipulative. It is the most powerful way to condition behavior. Think of it like a psychological slot machine.
A slot machine.
Yeah, so in classic behavioral experiments, if you put a rat in a box with a lever and the lever gives food every single time, the rat will only press it when hungry.
Right.
If the lever never gives food, the rat stops pressing it entirely. But if the lever gives food randomly, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, the rat will obsessively press the lever all day long.
Because it never knows when the payoff is coming.
Exactly. It's the psychology behind gambling. Because Liz is usually so aloof, dominant, and demanding, a small crumb of genuine praise acts as that unpredictable reward. It carries disproportionate weight.
People will work twice as hard to get a nod of approval from someone who rarely gives it.
Exactly. Compared to a manager or a friend who praises absolutely everything they do, it creates an addiction to her approval.
Wow, that is terrifyingly effective. She also uses fake concern and builds their confidence as a group. The text says she'll look at an ally and say, "Stay alive, darling. I'm not done using you yet." Or, before a big fight, she rallies them by saying, "If anyone dies today, it's definitely not us."
She builds an us versus them mentality.
It's this funhouse mirror of a healthy family dynamic. She is the untouchable matriarch. And the most important rule of all, the absolute bedrock of this dynamic that keeps them from leaving her. Liz never truly betrays the party. She acts selfish, she complains, but she fiercely protects them because they are her pack. She literally tells them, "Relax, little mice, you're in my queendom now."
And that is the social contract right there. That is why the pack tolerates the queen bee energy. High social intelligence recognizes that pure cruelty, constant belittlement, or actual betrayal isolates a leader.
Yeah, they just leave.
If she were just mean, they would abandon her. But because she provides absolute protection, unshakable confidence in a dangerous world, and that intermittent dopamine hit of approval, they accept the manipulation. They willingly trade a bit of their own autonomy for the security of standing behind the apex predator.
So, we know how she handles the group broadly, but not every party member is the same. People have completely different personalities, different values, different insecurities. How does a master manipulator adapt her dominance to specific individuals?
Oh, this is where it gets really good.
This leads us to the most detailed section of the document, the 9 psychological chess matches. The source document provides 9 distinct character archetypes and breaks down exactly how Liz interacts with them. This is where the psychology gets incredibly granular, and I want us to really take our time exploring each of these because I guarantee listeners have these exact people in their lives right now.
Absolutely. These are universal archetypes.
Let's start with match number 1, Addie. Addie represents chaos and curiosity. The text describes Addie as impulsive. She sees a glowing magical portal and immediately wants to jump in without checking for traps. How does Liz handle pure, unbridled spontaneity?
What's fascinating here is the pattern of Liz's response. When dealing with a wild card, and every office or friend group has an Addie, the person who proposes the crazy, high-risk idea.
We all know an Addie.
Liz doesn't try to stop her. She doesn't play the responsible parent or the wet blanket because that lowers her status to manager rather than queen.
Right.
Instead, she teases her, allows the chaos to happen, but then claims narrative control over it. She says, "Darling, I support all of your bad decisions. They make the best stories."
Yes. Addie starts the party, but Liz makes sure everyone remembers who ran it. Addie is chaos through curiosity. Liz is chaos through control. She orchestrates it. When Addie wants to jump in, Liz says, "Someone needs to watch you trigger the trap first." It's so good. It harnesses the wildcard energy without letting it threaten her authority. But then we have match number 2, Bannock. Bannock is the exact opposite of Addie. He represents leadership and responsibility. He's the battlefield commander. He's planning a quiet, stealthy infiltration of a fortress, doing risk assessments.
Right, and here we see a fundamental clash of paradigms. Bannock wants the practical structural solution. He wants scouts, perimeters, and silent takedowns. Liz wants psychological warfare.
Bannock wants to sneak over the wall. Liz wants to provoke the guards to open the front gates for them because, as she so brilliantly puts it in the text, bored men make mistakes.
I love that line so much. Bored men make mistakes.
Bannock tells her that her plan is too risky, and she just smirks and says, "Risk is just opportunity with better lighting." How does this dynamic not end in them killing each other?
Because there is mutual respect here. They are two dominant personalities negotiating control, but they aren't fighting for the exact same territory. Bannock isn't intimidated by her theatricality, and Liz respects that Bannock focuses on the group's survival rather than just inflating his own ego.
So they balance it.
It's a balanced leadership model. You see this in successful startups all the time.
Yeah.
You have the structural, risk-averse chief operating officer, the Bannock, making sure the company doesn't go bankrupt, and you have the bold, visionary, slightly unhinged CEO, the Liz, pushing for the insane marketing stunt that will put them on the map. They grate on each other, but they are incredibly effective together.
Moving on to match number 3, and this is the one I found the most intriguing, Devin. Devin represents stoic discipline. He's the mountain compared to Liz's storm. The text says Devin sits quietly, sharpening his sword, preparing for the next battle. He doesn't react to her provocation. He doesn't seek her validation. When she tries to poke him to get a reaction, he simply says, "Focus isn't about being interesting. It's about becoming better." Why does this completely short-circuit her usual tactics?
This is a critical dynamic to understand if you ever deal with a highly manipulative or narcissistic personality. Liz's entire arsenal, her slow pacing, her labels, her pauses, relies entirely on people reacting to her.
She needs the pushback.
She needs them to fear her, admire her, or even fight her. Any reaction is fuel. Devin provides no fuel. He does none of those things because he is entirely internally validated. When he says he wants to be better than himself, not better than anyone else, he is removing himself from her hierarchy. He isn't playing her game.
The text notes that she actually views him as an observer of the game rather than prey. She tells him, "You don't crave attention. You don't react to provocation. You don't need approval. That's very inconvenient."
It's almost like she respects him, but she's deeply annoyed by him.
I imagine if you tried the Liz silence on a Devin in a salary negotiation, they just let the silence sit there forever until you get uncomfortable.
Yeah. Exactly. It highlights a real-world truth. The absolute most difficult person for a manipulator to control is someone who doesn't want anything from them. Not their praise, not their fear, not their reaction.
I just don't care.
Devin's stoicism acts as a perfect, impenetrable shield against perception management, because his perception is entirely self-directed. When a manipulator meets a rock, the manipulator usually gets fascinated because it's a puzzle they can't solve.
Which brings us to a dynamic that is even more unsettling for Liz than stoicism. Match number 4, Kelly. Kelly represents empathy and compassion. The text sets a scene after a brutal battle. Kelly doesn't talk about the victory or the strategy. She looks at Liz and says, "You care more than you pretend to." I read this and thought, why is empathy more threatening to Liz than a sword?
Because Kelly is the only one who truly pierces Liz's armor. Kelly isn't trying to fight Liz for dominance, like Bannock. She isn't ignoring her, like Devon. Kelly is actively trying to understand her.
She sees the real person.
Yes. Kelly sees through the meticulously crafted performance to the vulnerable person underneath. And for someone who has built their entire identity around invulnerability, being truly seen is terrifying.
Liz tries to deflect, right? She uses humor. She says, "Oh, sweetheart, compassion doesn't look good in stilettos." But Kelly gently pushes back. You build a persona so people focus on that instead of the person underneath. It's a deeply psychological moment. The text uses a great metaphor. It notes that Kelly is like warm sunlight and Liz is like a glittering mirror, desperately trying to reflect that light away.
That metaphor is perfect because empathy threatens the core premise of Liz's identity, that raw power and dominance are the only things that keep you safe. If Kelly can see the vulnerability beneath the performance is compromised.
The illusion cracks.
The illusion of the apex predator cracks. It was a beautiful illustration of how genuine, persistent empathy can disarm even the most heavily fortified narcissistic defenses. You can't fight empathy with dominance, it just makes you look broken.
Okay, let's lighten it up a bit with match number 5, Kenny. Kenny represents logic and systems. He's the guy building spreadsheets for the fantasy fortress infiltration. The text says he calculates 6 guards, 2 patrol routes, 1 blind spot every 90 seconds. I know a dozen Kennys in real life. How does Liz deal with someone who only speaks math?
Kenny represents the belief that the world is a rational, predictable machine. Liz represents the reality that the world is driven by highly irrational, emotional human beings. Kenny wants to use math to sneak through the blind spot. Liz wants to use theater to trick the guards into thinking they belong there in the first place.
Kenny literally says to her, "People don't work that way." And Liz just flashes that smile and says, "Oh, sweetie, that's exactly how people work. They are such a great pairing because they actually desperately need each other." Liz tells him, "You bring the math. I'll handle the humans."
If you think about this in a corporate setting, you encounter this dynamic constantly. You have the data analysts, the engineers, the coders, the Kennys, who have the perfect, mathematically flawless, logical solution to a problem. And then you have the marketing executives or the high-level sales directors, the Lizes, who know that a mathematically imperfect solution, if presented with absolute confidence and the right narrative, will actually close the deal.
Right, the Kennys get frustrated by the Liz's lack of rigor, and the Lizes get bored by the Kennys' lack of vision.
But the most successful organizations figure out how to put them in the same room.
That's a perfect connection. Match number 6 is Mac, representing humor and chaos. This is described as collaborative chaos. Mac finds a fancy, expensive goblet on a table and asks if they should steal it. Liz tells him they should steal the chandelier instead to create a dramatic rumor.
With Mac, Liz finally finds a co-star rather than a pawn. Mac doesn't resist the theatrics, Mac amplifies them. It's like 2 improv comedians following the rule of yes and.
They just keep escalating.
Exactly. They are 2 performers competing to elevate the spectacle. It shows that Liz can be highly collaborative, provided the collaboration serves the overall goal of making them both legendary. She doesn't need to crush Mac because Mac's humor adds to her stage production.
Then we get surprisingly philosophical with match number 7, Tira. Tira represents wisdom and philosophy. They have a quiet campfire conversation in the text. Tira asks her, "Do you ever wonder who you are when no one's watching?"
Tira treats Liz's persona not as a threat to be managed, but as an academic subject to be studied. She asks questions that challenge the very nature of identity. Tira notes that over time, they will see whether the mask is protecting Liz or if it's hiding her. She approaches Liz almost like a therapist or a philosopher.
And Liz secretly enjoys it. She doesn't deflect like she did with Kelly's empathy. She leans in and says, "Careful, Tira, you're starting to ask interesting questions." It's a quiet, mutual exploration of the mask. It's a really cool dynamic. Then, shifting gears entirely, match number 8 is Tommy. Tommy's creativity and invention. The mad scientist meets the charismatic ringmaster. Tommy finds a highly unstable magical device and wants to know what its internal mechanics do.
Tommy asks, what could exist? He is driven by the pure mechanics of creation. Liz asks, how can we make it spectacular? She doesn't care about the engineering of the magical explosion. She just asks, if this explodes, how big are we talking?
Right.
Think of this like the dynamic between Steve Wozniak and Steve Jobs. Tommy provides the raw material of possibility, the circuitry, the invention. Liz provides the reality distortion field, the narrative staging to ensure the invention becomes a cultural legend.
That is a great comparison. And finally, match number 9, Val. Val represents ambition and competition. This is queen versus challenger. The text has a scene where Val tells Liz, "You almost got the team killed today," and warns her that her overconfidence is going to fail her one day. Val isn't afraid of her.
Val is the only one in the group who actively demands that Liz prove she deserves to wear the crown. Val refuses to orbit Liz. They are two apex personalities in the exact same arena. Val represents the relentless standard of excellence.
And Liz loves it. She doesn't try to destroy Val. She leans in and says, "When that day comes, I expect you to be standing right there to say I told you so." She tells Val she'd hate to disappoint her favorite competition. It's a relentless iron sharpens iron rivalry. When I look at all 9 of these dynamics, from the stoic Devons to the logical Kennys to the ambitious Vals, it requires a staggering level of social agility to navigate all of them without losing your own frame.
It does. It requires reading the room on a molecular level. It's about asking yourself, what does this specific person value most? Is it logic, humor, empathy, ambition? And once I know what they value, how do I frame my reality so that it subsumes theirs? How do I become the gravity in their specific solar system?
Which brings us to the absolute climax of this document, the grand finale and the ultimate truth of who Liz is. The text provides a final cinematic council scene titled "Rewrite the Play." The adventure is over, the tension is settled, and the party finally asks the lingering question. They point out the theatrics, the mind games, the manipulation, the constant performance, and Tira asks, "Who are you really?"
And this is where the entire psychological architecture of the character and the entire thesis of the document is laid bare.
Liz stands up, walks across the room slowly, using that pacing we talked about, and she says to them, "You all keep asking who I really am," as if the answer is hiding somewhere behind the performance. But darling, the performance is the answer.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this is a profound statement about human identity. In our modern culture, we often think of our true self as something authentic and hidden away, and our public face as a fake artificial mask. But Liz's thesis is that the mask is the truth.
That is heavy.
The world is a stage, and the rules of social interaction are entirely negotiable. Reality is heavily influenced by whoever has the audacity, the volume control, and the pacing to declare what that reality is.
She literally tells them, some people wait for permission, some people follow scripts, and some of us rewrite the play. It is an epic mic drop moment. But the document reminds the actor reading it, the only way that line works is if you slow down, use strategic pauses, and deliver it with a slight smile. If you yell it, you just sound arrogant and defensive. If you smile and whisper it, you sound like a queen. She exits playfully, saying, "The story just started, and the show needs a queen."
She leaves the room on a high note, controlling the ending of the interaction. She leaves them with an unanswerable philosophical statement in her physical absence, which forces them to sit with her narrative. It is the ultimate execution of perception management. She wrote the script, delivered the lines, and dropped the curtain exactly when she wanted to.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? We've spent this entire deep dive unpacking a masterclass on a D&D character. But really, we've unpacked a highly actionable masterclass on confidence. We've looked at the tangible power of the sonic signature, slowing your speaking pace down by 10 to 20%, lowering your volume so people are forced to lean in, and using the incredible power of the pause to create a vacuum of attention.
Those are tools anyone can use.
We've looked at how to navigate incredibly diverse social dynamics. Whether you are dealing with a logical Kenny who needs spreadsheets to feel safe, or an ambitious Val who wants to challenge you for the lead on a project.
We've explored how declaring reality, rather than constantly asking for permission or suggesting ideas, fundamentally alters the power dynamic in any room. We've seen how labeling, framing, and emotional detachment can strip the anxiety out of your communication. When you understand the mechanics of intermittent reinforcement, locus of control, and cognitive dissonance, you gain absolute control over how you are perceived by the world around you.
It is so incredibly applicable whether you are negotiating a car price, leading a team through a crisis, or just trying to feel a little more in control of your own life. Which leaves us with one final thought for you to mull over. If confidence is truly just allowing reality to catch up with you, and if our complex social dynamics are ultimately just a play with highly negotiable rules, what script are you currently following in your own life? Who wrote the labels that you are currently accepting as truth? And more importantly, is it time you started writing your own stage directions?
That is the essential question. The stage is always there, and the play is always happening. The only variable is who is directing the action.
Exactly. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Go out there, slow your speaking pace down just a little bit, and practice your best velvet dagger smile in the mirror. You might be surprised by who you see looking back. Catch you next time.